I'm Linda from Sewing Bee Fabrics. I want to show you how you can make this dress from about 2 meters of fabrics and just a few measurements. So depending on your size, the width of the fabric and whether you're pattern matching at all will depend on exactly how much fabric you need, but you're probably going to want around 2 meters of fabric. So I made my dress and the tiny little dress for my daughter out of the 2 meters. There was just enough space around the edge of the circle to be able to get her a little dress in as well. So the measurements that you're going to want to be able to take for your dress is you're going to want an over bust measurement. So you're going to come around the back with your tape measure underneath your armpits and you're literally coming over the bust, and obviously you're going to want to get your hair out of the measurement, otherwise you'll be including that in your dress as well. So that's your over bust measurement. You're going to want to do a waist measurement. You're also going to want to do from over bust to waist, and then from waist to whatever length you want your skirt. So I made mine to a knee length. So now we're going to turn those measurements into fabric. This top line across here, this is going to be half of your over bust measurement plus about 1 inch or a couple of centimetres dependent on which you're working in. The bottom line is going to be half of your waist measurement plus 1 inch or a couple of centimetres. If you're more on the curvy side, you're going to want to add a slight curve here. You don't want to add too much or it's going to make it look a little bit baggy and you're going to end up with extra fabric hanging around. Because of it being a stretchy knit fabric, it's going to conform a little better anyway. You want to cut 2 of these so that you're opposite back to back. Then what we're going to do is we're going to add a circle skirt to it. Now the easiest way I find to make a circle skirt is to first cut out a circle that's going to be effectively your waist. Now to do that, what you need to do is the bottom measurement that you had on your waist, you want to minus off your seam allowances, so normally 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch on both sides, and then from that, that's your circumference. So if you use a circle calculator on Google and just find out what your radius would be, you can fold up a piece of square paper. So I've just used a bit of wrapping paper, and then trace out what your radius would be across here, snip across the end, and then you can unfold it out, and that would be the same as what your waist is. Now what I tend to do to make it easier to cut the fabric is I then fold that circle in half and then fold the fabric on its widest length so that you have the half of your circle lined up with the fold on your fabric so that you've got the most amount of space around it, and then you can measure out to whatever your desired skirt length is going to be, and then from there mark it with pins as you go around and then snip round and through. Now you want to cut this circle out really carefully because you're going to want that later for your sleeves. And as you can see, you'll end up with a giant piece of fabric with a big round hole in the middle. Now, if you've cut your hole a little bit too big, don't stress too much. What we can do is we can either gather it slightly, or as you're sewing it out, you can always stretch the top a little bit to go with it, and then that will pull up the slack. And that's the beauty of sewing with knits, is that if you're not 100% accurate, it's going to be an awful lot more forgiving. So this is going to be a lovely quick one to sew up. Because I'm using a scuba fabric, but this goes for any knit fabric, it doesn't fray, and so it's up to you whether you choose to hem it or not. Because scuba's a little bit more structured and a little bit stiffer, a little bit like ponte, then it will hold its shape a lot better than a jersey will, which might roll a little bit. So you might want to finish a jersey if you're going to use that to make this kind of dress instead, but for the scuba we just don't have to, so it's really quick to sew up. On my sewing machine I've got a double needle here, and I've also got a knit foot here. It's not necessary for scuba because it holds its shape better, but I think it gives you better movement and better stretch before you tend to break any stitches. So this is how I prefer to sew it. All I'm going to do is just a straight stitch. I've got my 2 bodice pieces, they're pattern side together, and I'm just going to sew down the side seams. And then just going to do exactly the same on the other side. So at this point you should have a bit of a tube shape. I would try that on and see if there's any fine adjustments you want to make, whether you want to tailor any little bits in or whether you want to leave them as is. I wouldn't make it too tight. Bear in mind that you're going to have straps later on as well to be able to hold things in place, so it doesn't need to be boob tube like and too tight. Now what you're going to do is just to fold your tube in half like this and just use a clip just to mark roughly on those points. Now with your skirt section, you're going to mark the middle circle into quarters. So it doesn't matter where you fold because obviously it's a full circle, but you want to fold in half and then again just mark where you've got a couple of clips. Then you're folding again in half again, and then where you've got that bit you're going to want to line up with these clips here. Now we're putting it on so that the pattern side faces together and you effectively want your skirt inside your tube. So we're just going to put this one lined up here, and then we're going to scoot the skirt inside the tube and then from the other section you're going to want that to line up with the other one that's on your bodice. So that's just going to line up right here. Now your side seams are going to line up with the other parts that you've already clipped to the skirt. So we're going to try and find those in the middle. So you've got one here that's just going to clip onto here, and exactly the same on this side. This one we're going to clip to here. So now we know we've got our circle spread into exact quarters, and it doesn't matter if it gets stretched a little bit as you're sewing because you're still going to have overall the same amount of fabric per quarter of the dress. You're not going to accidentally find that you've stretched all of it and then all of a sudden you've got a big bit of fabric at the end that you don't really know what to do. So now we're going to sew that bit on. It's going to be just as easy as it was to sew the bodice together. We're literally just going to sew a straight line around to fix those two pieces together. Just watch out that you haven't got any pieces getting lost at the back because obviously you've got two different shapes. You've got a circle and you've got a flat. So again, we're just going to do a straight stitch all the way around. And just take out your pieces as you go. But obviously if you feel that you need more clips than this to be able to hold everything in a better position, then that's absolutely fine too. And then we just have the straps left. So to make your sleeves, all you're going to want to do is to take your central circle and cut it in half. If you are particularly large or particularly small, or you are very tall for your frame, you might find that you need to make your circle slightly larger or bigger, so you might need to cut another circle. But on the whole, a circle somewhere between 15 and 20-ish centimetres is going to fit the majority of people, but you might just want to start off bigger and then you can always bring it down smaller if you find that it's too much if you're having to cut a second circle. So for me, my centre circle works absolutely fine. all I'm going to do is to fold it in half like this. Now normally if you were drafting a top that had full sleeves, when you go to draw the top of the sleeves, you wouldn't draw it at a complete flat, you'd draw it at a slight angle. So that's the angle that we want to create for our sleeve here. What we're looking at trying to do is to pop that between the layers of your bodice on that slight angle, and then you're looking to pin it into position here. So we're going to be looking at a position similar to that, pinning it in place so that across the two you should come into this kind of a position. What I would suggest is then try it on, double check that you've pinned it into a good place, that it covers your bra strap, that you're happy with it. If you wanted to do a sleeve that was an awful lot more upright, all that will happen is that because of the structure of the fabric, it's going to go into more of a flutter sleeve shape, and that sticks up from the sleeve a little bit away from your shoulder if you're going to use something like ponte or scuba. On a knit fabric like jersey, it would be absolutely fine. But for something with a bit more structure, I find that it tends to make my shoulders look a lot broader than they need to look. So I prefer to have it on a slight slant, and then it sits a little bit more naturally. So to sew the sleeves on, I prefer to take the front off so that I've got my free arm, so I've got more space to be able to move the sleeves around it. But you do whichever you feel is more easy. You might find that you're just as easy to move the sleeves around your normal sewing machine setup. So again, all I'm doing is just a very quick running stitch all the way down to the other side, and then I'll repeat that all 4 times. And again, just repeat that on all 4, and then it's finished.
And here it is, all finished. So if you enjoyed that, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and we'll bring you more sewing tutorials soon.